Dirtle Magic. Hello and welcome back. You can follow our post on Twitter and Facebook at DirtleMTG to stay up to date on our latest videos and other posts, and you can join a more robust discussion about Casual Commander at our blog, thedicebag.blog. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this content to help the channel and the blog grow. Another way you can support the channel, though, is through our affiliate links in the description below. If you're looking for single sealed product or gaming accessories to protect all of that glory, please consider clicking the links in the description. Now, grab some spells, it's time to dirtle. Hello. Today we gaze in wonder at the stars in the skies of Innistrad with Vadrik, Astral Archmage. Coming along to ponder at that starry splendor are Animar, Rakdos the Lord of Riots, and Karona the False God. I win the die roll, and play the volatile fjord I drew. Animar drops a command tower. Rakdos plays and taps a mountain. Karona plays a frontier bivouac. Back to me, and I play just an island. A snow forest enters play for Animar. They then cast Arcane Signet. A swamp enters the field for Rakdos, and they cast a Stormfist Crusader, one of my more favorite cards in my Niv Mizzet deck. Karona's turn sees a Mosswort Bridge into play, hiding away one of the top 4 cards of their deck. One of my other fave cards comes to hand, and I play an island. I cast Vadrik, and begin the Sun and Star Cycle. 2 Animar, and a Rockfall Veil tumbles into play. Beast Whisperer hits the field, and they pass. Rakdos' turn sees the first trigger of the Crusader, and I draw my own Arcane Signet. The Rakdos player then casts a Cryptolith Fragment, and they move to combat. The Crusader is assigned to me, and I take the 2, dropping to 37. The False God plays a Temple Garden tapped, and taps their other lands, and passes the turn. At the beginning of my turn, day becomes night. I play a mountain, and then cast Arcane Signet. I follow that up with a Spectacle Mage, and pass my turn. Over to Animar, and night becomes day. Tide Channel Pathway drops to the table. They then cast their commander, the Soul of Elements, drawing a card for the Whisperer. Llanowar Elves follows it down, and they gain another card, and Animar gains a counter. 2 Rakdos, I lose 1 life like I did before, and draw a Primal Amulet. Rakdos, Lord of Riots, is then cast, defiling the battlefield. 2 combat, and the Crusader swings into the Karona player. They take the 2. In the second main phase, the Rakdos player casts a cost-reduced Solemn Simulacrum. Savannah hits the field for the Karona player, and they cast Tempt with Discovery. My opponents try to come to a consensus about saying no, but I decide to grab a land since my cost reduction is nowhere near their cost reduction. The Karona player grabs a Temple of the False God, and so do I. The Animar player grabs their own Frontier Bivouac, and the Rakdos player declines getting a land. The Karona player doesn't get any extra lands for some reason, and passes. I draw Cyclonic Rift. I play an island, and cast Primal Amulet. Animar's turn has Castle Garenbrig into play. Elvish Mystic is cast, and the player draws a card, and Animar gains its counter. Paradise Druid then hits the stack, and they draw a card, and Animar gains a counter again. Talisman of Creativity comes down, and the turn rolls over. Back to Rakdos, and I draw Metallurgic Summons. Felwar Stone hits the field, followed by Sunbird's Invocation. This, however, is countered on the stack with Negate by Animar, and it hits the bin. 2 attacks, and Rakdos himself swings into the Animar player. They take 6 commander damage, dropping to 28. Karona simply drops a Vesuva. It becomes a Volatile Fjord, and they cast Collective Restraint. I draw a Fevered Visions for my turn. I play an island, and cast the Visions. I pass, and at the end of the turn, I draw Selendi Visions. It's a very visionary turn, if I do say so myself. The turn rolls to Animar, and they play a Hinterland Harbor. They cast Ulamog's Crusher, and I draw a card, and a counter is placed on Animar. In response, I cast Selendi Visions, and Primal Amulet gets a counter. With the Vision, I grab a Cackling Counterpart, and the stack resolves. They then cast a Skyshroud Claim, and grab some Forest from their deck. They move to combat, and swing the Animar against the Rakdos player. Sad Robot is assigned to block, and it dies, drawing the Rakdos player a card. At the end of turn, they draw another card from the Fevered Visions, and take 2 damage. 2 Rakdos, and I draw Aristic Study. Dragonskull Summit hits the field, and they cast Warstorm Surge. Animar stops this with another counterspell, counterspell. Rakdos then casts Burning Rune Demon, tutoring up 2 cards. Bane of Bala Ged hits the graveyard, and I have to wonder what they kept. They move to combat, and Rakdos is assigned to my face. I respond by casting a well-reduced Cyclonic Rift, and Primal Amulet gets a counter. My opponent's boards are bounced away, and my face is safe. At the end of turn, Fever draws the Rakdos player a card, and they take the 2 damage. Rites of Flourishing is cast by the False God on their turn. It's followed by Rite of the Raging Storm. They draw a card and take 2 damage at the end of their turn. To me, and I gain a 5/1 Hasty and Trampling Elemental token from the red Rite. I then draw an Archaeomancer and an island thanks to the green Rite. I play the island and cast Cackling Counterpart targeting the elemental token. I hold priority and cast Dualcaster Mage after the amulet triggers. I could go infinite here, but without haste on my creatures, I have some reservations. Sure enough in chat, the Rakdos player says they have a wipe, so I only make enough tokens to 1. Bait out the wipe, and for possible defense. You know, in case they're bluffing. I finish by making 2 total elemental tokens, and cast Metallurgic Summons. I move to combat, swinging the 2 elementals into the Animar player along with Vadrik, and the Spectral Mage into the Rakdos player, totally forgetting about the original elemental token. Damage is good, and the Animar player drops to 11, and the Rakdos player to 29. At the end of turn, my elementals are sacrificed, and I draw an Archmage Emeritus. Over to Animar, and they gain their elemental for the turn. They drop a Cinderglade and a Snow Island to the field, and they recast their commander. They then cast Llanowar Elves, giving Animar a new fresh counter. Elvish Mystic is then cast, and Animar gets the second counter. At this point, they realize they're playing into the board wipe, and discuss with the table what of my things they should destroy with Nature's Claim. They pick Primal Amulet, and it hits the bin. Talisman of Creativity comes down, and then so does a Commander Sphere, and then an Arcane Signet. They attack with the Elemental token in combat, and it's coming at me. I double block with 2 Dualcaster tokens, and take only 1 trample damage. At the end of turn, Animar draws the card, takes 2, and goes down to 9. Moving to Rakdos, and they gain the Elemental token. They play a Swamp, and recast their Felwar Stone. They then recast Cryptolith Fragment, and then they cast Burn Down the House. The field is wiped of creatures, and my commander returns to the command zone. At the end of the turn, they take 2, draw a card, and drop to 27. Back to Karona, and they cast a Goblin Spymaster. Ghostly Prison follows it down, and they move to combat. The elemental token they gained on their upkeep comes at me, and I take 5, dropping to 29. In the second main, they cast Xantcha, Sleeper Agent, and I am gifted the creature. Yay. They drop a Selesnya Sanctuary, returning a Volatile Fjord Vesuva to their hand, and at the end of turn, a card is drawn and damage taken. On my turn, I draw an island and Jace's Sanctum. I cast Crumb, Ludovic's Opus, and move to combat. I swing Crumb and the elemental token at the Animar player to knock them out of the game, and Xantcha at the Rakdos player. Damage is good, and the Animar player takes lethal while Rakdos drops to 22. In the second main, I cast Archaeomancer and return the Cyclonic Rift to my hand. My turn ends, and I gain a Goblin token that forces my creatures to attack if they're able, sack the Elemental token, and draw a Blasphemous Act. 2 Rakdos, and they gain the obligatory Elemental token from the Rite of the Raging Storm. They recast their commander using the Cryptolith Rite, and move to combat. They swing the Elemental token at me, and I double block with the Archaeomancer and the Goblin token, absorbing 3 damage and taking 2, dropping to 26. In the second main, Kervik the Merciless is cast, and I draw a Geistframe Reservoir from the Crumb trigger. Stuffy Doll then comes down, and they choose the Karona player, thankfully. Animate Dead is cast, and once in play, brings back the Bane of Bala Ged from the Rakdos player's graveyard, and they pass. At the end of turn, they gain a Goblin, they draw a card, and they take the 2, dropping to 19. Karona's turn starts with the right token and the right draw, but was it at the right time is the question. Glacial Chasm is dropped to the field, and I begin to think so, with Savannah being sacrificed for it. Nature's Lore is cast, and Kervik triggers, dealing 2 damage to the Karona player, which is prevented by the Chasm. They pass, taking damage from Fevered Visions, and drawing the card. My turn draws me a Runechanter's Pike and an island. I play the island, and cast Rhystic Study. Kervik deals 3 damage to me for doing so. I then cast Cyclonic Rift on Overload, and Kervik sends 2 damage over to the protected Karona player. I gain a 2/2 construct from Metallurgic Summons. Once the boards are bounced, I move to combat. In response, Sascha is activated by the Karona player twice, and I lose 4 life while they draw 2 cards. I swing everything I can into the Rakdos player, and drop them to 5. I pass, drawing Terramorphic Expanse. Over to Rakdos, and Cryptolith Fragment hits the stack. Rhystic Study triggers, and I draw Narset's Reversal. They then cast Felwar Stone, and I draw Charmbreaker Devils with the Study trigger, and a Mountain with the Chrome trigger. Stuffy Doll re-enters the field, and I gain a Firebrand Archer. They pass, drawing for the Fevered Visions and dropping to 3. 2 Karona's turn, and Rites of Flourishing comes back down while I draw a Mountain. They pass, drawing a card and discarding 5. On my turn, I draw Chaos Warp. In response to the Rites trigger, Sascha is activated by the Karona player twice to drain me for 4 more while they draw 2 cards. I then draw a Mountain. I play 2 Mountains, and then cast Shark Typhoon. I follow that up with Chaos Warp on Sascha, so it can't be used to drain me down, and I gain a 3/3 Flying Shark and a 3/3 Construct. Warp resolves, and the Karona player gains a Soul Conduit. That might not have worked out too well. I move to combat and swing with Crumb into the Rakdos player, knocking them out of the game. In the second main, I cast Geistframe Reservoir, gaining another 3/3 Shark. I pass, drawing Electrostatic Field, but discarding it, Terramorphic Expanse, and the Firebrand Archer. 2 Karona's turn and 3 Visits hits the stack, and they pay for the study. They grab a Taiga from their deck, and then recast Rite of the Raging Storm. They pay for the study again, but Crumb allows me to draw the Celestus, which I plan on taking out of the deck later. Otherworld Atlas hits the stack, and I'm again denied card draw. They activate the Atlas to put a counter on it. At the end of turn, they draw a card from the Visions. Back to me, and I draw Cascade Bluffs and Faithless Looting. I play both Bluffs and a Mountain, and then cast the Faithless Looting, trying to find an answer to get around the Glacial Chasm. I gain a counter on the Reservoir, and some more Shark and Construct tokens, and draw Sulphur Falls and Volcanic Offering. I discard Blasphemous Act and the Celestus to finish the resolution of the spell. I cast Jace's Sanctum and gain a Shark. I activate the Reservoir to exile the top card, but unfortunately it's a Mountain. I cast Rutha and pass, unable to damage the other player. I draw a Bloodwire Entity to end my turn. Karona's turn has them lose 6 life for the upkeep trigger on the Chasm, putting a 3rd time counter on the land. Bayou hits the field, and they cast a Brain Geyser where X equals 7. I get to draw for the study, and get a Pondify. I then cast Narset's Reversal, gaining counters and tokens. I also scry and keep Electro Dominance on top, and copy the Brain Geyser for myself, sending the original back to its owner's hand. Once resolved, I draw 7 cards. They pass the turn. To my turn, and I draw a Command Beacon and a Surtland Frostpire. I drop Command Tower and an island, and then cast Electro Dominance, where X equals 15 in case they switch our life totals. I gain the tokens, the counter, and I scry the card to the top. I attempt to free cast Volcanic Offering, unfortunately forgetting that their token was gone and has no legal creature to target. I decide to cast Bloodwire Entity instead, bringing back the Chaos Warp to the top of my deck as a backup to get rid of the Chasm. I then remember I can't hurt them with the Dominance because of said Chasm, and I pass the turn frustrated I wasted it. In response to the end of turn triggers, Otherworldly Atlas is activated, and Swords to Plowshares is cast on my 17/17 Flying Shark, and I gain 17 life. Karona then activates the Soul Conduit to switch our life totals, and I go down to 14 while they go up to 32. I draw the Chaos Warp with Fevered Visions, and then discard Wheel of Misfortune, Frostpire, Archmage Emeritus, Izzet Signet, Charmbreaker Devils, and Command Beacon. Over to Karona, and they lose the 8 life to keep the Chasm in play. Vesuva then hits the field, becoming another Glacial Chasm, and they sacrifice the Bayou. Command Tower follows it down, and they recast Brain Geyser for 7, and this time they get to draw 7 cards. They cast Angel's Trumpet, and I draw Tarlin Sky Summoner off the Crumb trigger, but they pay for the study again. Felwar Stone then comes down, and I get to draw Reality Shift. They pass, but I respond by casting Reality Shift to exile their elemental token, so that I would have legal targets this time for Volcanic Offering. I gain the usual tokens, counter, and get to scry 1, keeping Lear on top. Back to me, and I drop an island and a mountain. I cast Volcanic Offering, targeting the Vesuva Chasm first. At this point, my opponent disconnects for unknown reasons, and eventually I win the game. Good game to my opponents. Well, I think it's still safe to say I'm not the best at playing Spell Slinger, but practice will help out with that over time. Soon after my combo earlier, it became a game of archenemy, so I am glad that I at least survived it all. Luckily for me, both Animar and Rakdos usually lead decks that can have their momentum completely destroyed, or at least stalled long enough to be able to defeat those strategies or deal significant damage. This was also probably the most free draw I've seen from decks other than one dedicated group hug player, so that has to be taken into consideration when judging the game itself. Thank you for tuning in to another casual Commander game here on Dirtle Magic. Until next time, stay safe out there.